So today is Father's Day. So happy Father's Day to the fathers in the room. Um, Interesting. Father's Day was, Mother's Day became a holiday in like 1910, and it was like 50 years later that Mother's Day or that Father's Day became a day. I mean, so there was a celebration. There was kind of an unofficial celebration starting about almost immediately after Mother's Day, but then it was another 50 years. It wasn't until 72, I want to say, that Father's Day became an official thing. Whatever. I mean, it's not a holiday, but so happy Father's Day to the fathers in the room, and to those who have fathers, or to those who know fathers, or something like that. But speaking of holidays, for those who may have forgotten, tomorrow is Juneteenth. Tomorrow is Juneteenth. It is a holiday. It's a federal holiday, so there's not going to be any mail or any of that. Things are going to be closed and that kind of stuff. But that's the day that celebrates the last notice, or it's actually when the news of the emancipation of the slaves reached Galveston, Texas. There was a general who was sending this notice out, and the last major city to get the news was Galveston, Texas, and that was on June 19th, 1865. And so ever since that time, I mean, almost immediately, African Americans have celebrated June 19th as Juneteenth. So happy Juneteenth to all. Also on this day, June 18th, not June 19th. So today is June 18th. It was on this date in 1546 that judges in England sentenced Anne Askew, Askew, to death. Anne Askew. This is during the reign of Henry VIII. This was prior to the complete Protestant takeover, and so she was sentenced to death for several things, most notably not following the Catholic doctrine of transubstantiation. That is when you take the elements of communion, the Lord, what we call the Lord's Supper, the bread and the cup, that it is the body and blood of Christ. She said that is not true. That is not correct. She was not. And then plus, I think the thing that really bothered everybody is that she was not quite as subservient as they hoped she would be. And so she ended up getting sentenced to death and was ultimately tortured and then burned at the stake. But that took place on this date in 1546. In 1812, the U.S. declared war on Britain. This is what we call the War of 1812, which, interestingly enough, it's one of the key, what's the word I'm looking for, events in Canadian history. Because, Canadians, when the Canadians tell the story of the War of 1812, they won. It's like, wait a minute, we won the War of 1812. We can't both have won the War of 1812. Well, don't tell that to a Canadian, because again, they won the War of 1812. Because, as you may recall from your history class, some of you are thinking, wait, did I take a history class? No. The U.S. invaded Canada as part of the War of 1812. They invaded Quebec, and we invaded a couple of other places. And the British citizens at the time beat us back. And so they resisted the invasion and were not taken over. So Canada, one of the elements that brought Canada together as a nation, it was like 30 years later that Canada, 1867, 40 years later. But it was one of the things that made Canada start thinking about itself as an independent nation was the War of 1812, which we won, by the way. Speaking of winning and losing, it was on this date in 1815, the Battle of Waterloo, which of course most of us remember because of the ABBA song. But Waterloo, for the want of a nail, the battle was lost, and the Iron Duke of Wellington beats Napoleon. Actually, if anybody seen Les Mis? Has anybody seen the play or the movie Les Mis? If you've read the book Les Mis, the book is like 1,200 pages long, and there's a 100-page long description of the Battle of Waterloo, which conveniently did not make it into the movie or the play. But it's like 100 pages. You read all the 100 pages about the Battle of Waterloo, just so you get to the point where you find out that at the end of the Battle of Waterloo, there's a guy who's robbing the bodies at the Battle of Waterloo. And the guy that's robbing the bodies at the Battle of Waterloo is Thénardier, the innkeeper. And he tries to rob the body of Marius's father. Marius is the one who goes on to marry Cosette, and this is how they connect. In the book, it's not quite that way in the movie, but in the book, 100 pages. 100 pages on the Battle of Waterloo. There's 100 pages on the sewers of Paris as well. So if you want to know about the sewers of Paris, you go knock yourself out. It's in that book, Les Miserables. But be that as it may, in 1928, Amelia Earhart was the first woman on this day to fly across the Atlantic. You remember Lindbergh had done it a year or so before, and she was the first one to do it on this date in 1928. And finally, today, anybody know whose birthday it is today? As I see who the baby boomers in the room are. Today is Paul McCartney's birthday. He is 81 years old today. So yeah, Paul McCartney is 81 years old. And as far as I know, he's still touring. Actually, I know Ringo is touring. He's touring. Ringo's older. Ringo's 82 or 83 or something like that. But yeah, it was on this date, 1942, that he was born. So happy birthday, Sir Paul. Other news, a couple of other things I just wanted to talk about. There's two interesting things happened this past week, or have been happening, and it kind of came to fruition this past week. One of them was that this was in the Chicago Tribune, a couple of articles in the Chicago Tribune, and in the Wall Street Journal, big page and a picture in the Wall Street Journal, that the Southern Baptist Convention disfellowshipped, well, actually, that's not accurate. They approved or upheld the disfellowshipping of Saddleback Church in California. Saddleback Church had ordained 3 women pastors, and as a result, they were kicked out of the Southern Baptist Convention. And there's another church called Fern Creek. There were 2 churches involved that they were petitioning to get back in. The Southern Baptist Church said no, stay out, and they changed their the BFM, as they call it. The BFM is the Baptist Faith and Message. That's the doctrinal statement of the Southern Baptist Convention, and they changed that to make it very clear that this will never happen again. Okay, now I'm kind of sympathetic to Saddleback's position, but the point I tell you, this is all one of the problems that being a Baptist is that people see that this is what happened in the Southern Baptist Convention, and they see me and they go, oh, wait, look what you guys did. It's like, we are not a Southern Baptist church. Okay, we have never been a Southern Baptist church. The Southern Baptist Church is the second largest denomination in the United States. So first is the Catholic Church. But the Southern Baptists only represent maybe 40% of all the Baptists in the U.S. Okay, there's several other conventions. There's the Northern Baptist Convention, the American Baptist Convention. It used to be the Northern Baptist. They changed to the American Baptist Convention. There's Free Will Baptists, there's Conservative Baptists, there's Primitive Baptists, there's all kinds of other Baptists, and there are Independent Baptists. That's a whole thing in and of itself, and we would be a Independent Baptist church, but we are not a Southern Baptist church. So if you don't want to get into that conversation with someone, you just say, well, we're not a Southern Baptist church. I had a conversation with somebody the other day, a couple weeks ago, where I was describing what I did, or our church and what I did, and this guy said to me, he said, well, listen, I know, I worked at a Southern Baptist church, and and deacons only did this. And I said, oh yes, but we are not a Southern Baptist church. I'm surprised you don't know that, or you didn't recognize there's a difference. But be that as it may, so that's something to keep in mind. The other thing that's interesting, kind of in the other direction, is that there's a thing going on in the Methodist Church. That there are, across the United States, there are 30,000 Methodist churches. I didn't realize there were that many, but there are. Actually, I met a guy who's a Methodist. There's a Methodist church in Lockport. Did you know there's a Methodist church in Lockport? So, but there's 30,000 Methodist churches in Lockport, and most of them are part of the United Methodist Church. Just the United Methodist Church. I think that's what it's called. Might be conference. United Methodist Church. And of the 30,000 of them, something like 5,000 of them, 5,500 of them, are now they're breaking away. I can't remember disfellowship, disentangling. I forget what the name. They've got a name for it, where they're removing themselves from the Methodist Church because the United Methodist Church has taken a position similar, well, further than Saddleback. They're besides ordaining women, they are fully embracing the whole LGBTQ culture as well. And I said that to just kind of say that, I think 20 years from now, if I'm still teaching here, 20 years from now, when I get up here on June 18th, I'm going to say, it was 20 years ago that this great shift happened in, but the reason that is to somebody who is not a Protestant, the difference between an independent Baptist and a Southern Baptist and a Methodist is like, you're all the same. You're all the same to us. So if you're Islamic, looking at the Methodist Church, the Southern Baptist Church, you guys are all the same. Just like we look at an Islamic person and think Sufi, Sunni, Kurd, you're all the same. Even Catholic, there's different Catholic groups. There's I went to I had a roommate once who went to a Catholic church that had rejected Vatican II. That is, they still did it in Latin, the whole Mass in Latin, which I think we're going to start doing here at First Baptist, just to kind of, we thought that people were talking about wanting to see something different from the podium, so I think today it's going to be in Latin, right? Isn't that what it's going to? No.
Sounds like a good plan.
Something. Be fun to do and see if anyone notices. I think that'd be the kind of the interesting thing to do. So, but that's it. I just, I saw this, and again, it's in the Wall Street Journal. Okay, these stories are in the Wall Street Journal. So it's like, to me, that's one of the interesting things about the Wall Street Journal. It's like, man, when you see an article like that in the Wall Street Journal, wow, this is not just an inside baseball sort of thing. You know what I mean? When I talk about the only people who really care about this are, a few obscure Baptists in Downers Grove. No, this is like big news. Big news here. But Song of Solomon is big news too, Song of Songs. And what I want to do today is this is going to be Song of Songs Part 2. Because when I finished yesterday, actually, sometimes this happens when you're preparing a lesson for something. You have an idea of how the lesson is going to go. And you do your reading, and you do your studying, you do your preparation. And then you realize, and this happens to me, maybe it happens to me more than it happens to you all. You go out and you get all these resources, books and videos and stuff like that. And then, so as you're getting ready to do it, then you realize, oh, wait a minute, I forgot to read that resource. And so you pick up that resource, think, I got time, I'll read this resource. And that resource just puts it all a whole different direction. You've done all this work, so there, wait a minute, kind of thing. And so, although I briefly, because I kind of had to rush the end last week, I wasn't able to really, embrace what Peter Kreeft has written about the book Song of Songs. And I wanted to talk about that. So I am indebted today to Peter Kreeft, who is a professor of philosophy at Boston College. He wrote this book called Three Philosophies of Life, where he looks at the wisdom literature. He's a believer about Ecclesiastes, Job, and Song of Songs. And I want to talk about what he says about Song of Songs. I wanted to just touch base with, as far as when we ended up last week. I'll pass these out here. I remember when I was a kid, I went to a Christian high school, and there was a guy there who would speak occasionally, and he would, when he got up to speak, he would always talk about how much fun he got trying to name his messages, and of course I've also heard that if you really want good names for those of you who are planning to go into ministry, just pick up any country western album, and the names of the songs are good titles for messages. But when you start talking about Song of Songs and you talk about love songs, there are like a number of songs. I mean, in honor of Paul McCartney, I could have said today we're going to talk about silly love songs. See what I did there? It's a Paul McCartney. Okay, but so last week, I started off with at the top I titled it Just an Old-Fashioned Love Song, which some of us remember from Three Dog Night. Although I can't remember, it wasn't written by them. I think it was written. I forgot who wrote that song. I think it might have been written by like Randy Newman. You know who Randy Newman? He's the guy that wrote the song for Toy Story. You Got a Friend in Me. But be that as it may, and then at the bottom, it ended with a Beatles song. At the bottom of the title says, "All You Need Is Love." Okay. Now this week I kept the "All You Need Is Love" at the bottom. That's a Beatles song, and at the top it says the things we do for love. Does anybody remember that? There's actually two songs, but does anybody remember the things we do for love, like walking in the rain and the snow, and there's nowhere to go? Okay, so Dave and I will be singing that today in church, in Latin, of course. Just to see if anybody notices, kind of stuff. We talked last week about Song of Songs. And Song of Songs, again, is that superlative. It is the greatest. That's in the Hebrew. That's how you say the greatest thing. It's the Song of Songs. Song of Songs, King of Kings, Lord of Lords. Okay, Debbie is the wife of wives. Okay, homemaker of homemakers, gardener of gardeners. Okay, that's it's a superlative. It's the best kind of stuff. And I talked about a lot of the different ways to look at Song of Songs, or the ways that the book has been viewed, and the traditional view, and by traditional I mean like, if you have a Schofield Bible and you look at the notes, to me that's traditional. Whatever Schofield says, that's traditional. This is a story written by Solomon about a woman he loved, and that there's two people. It's Solomon and he's talking to this woman, and that's okay. I mean, if you want to go with that, that's good. I don't think there's many contemporary Bible scholars that would really go, yeah, I think Solomon wrote this. Yeah, this is about Solomon. For a number of reasons. There's some language and all of that kind of stuff, but really the big problem as far as supporting the Solomonic authorship is asking yourself, or just kind of what we know about Solomon, being that he had something like 700 wives. It's kind of hard to get behind the idea of Solomon being this great romantic guy with that was this sensitive and this attentive with 700 wives. Okay, I mean, this is where I insert my own "it's hard enough with one wife" joke. But I can do anything today because it's Father's Day, right? I get a pass, right? I get the no, yes, no. I'm just
don't push it.
Yeah, don't push it. Well, maybe if I did it in Latin, it'll be different. I'm just saying. So it's kind of hard to buy that Solomon is the one that is this sensitive. It just, you're like, okay, was this wife number 150? Maybe this was his last wife? Maybe he had to go through 700 wives or 1,000 wives. I forget what the number is.
I think it's 700 wives and 300 concubines.
Okay. So, it's kind of hard to really buy into Solomon being that. I mean, if he was a poor guy, again, I think I talked about this last week, but if it was a poor guy that had multiple wives and was able to talk them into marriage, then it'd be one thing. But when you're the king and you basically are the most powerful, this is Israel at its most powerful, and you're the king and you can pretty much compel, hey, I'm going to marry you, and you don't have a whole lot of choice. The romantic element vis-a-vis Solomon is a little weak. But, the picture of love that's presented is still good, whether Solomon is the actual author or not. Okay, but another way, and so there were several different ways we look at it. One of the ways that I didn't talk about that Debbie mentioned on the way home, and the way home, our traveling these days is pretty exciting. So I'm just telling you, travel this day for us is pretty exciting because our car is possessed. We have a red. So if you hear anybody talking about a red Focus that's making noise, that's our car. Something has gotten into the radio system, and it's just like this outrageously loud static. Just so we are literally traveling with earplugs and headphones on. Because you'll just be driving along and all of a sudden, and it's outrageously loud. It's outrageously loud, and I can't really do a whole lot about it because, it really got. I mean, it started getting bad like Thursday or Friday of this past week, and then, Friday we had all day at a funeral, so we drove up to this funeral, picked up my brother-in-law. Got him in the car and said, before we got it, I said, listen, we need to warn you. Our car is possessed, And he offered to have a prayer service over our car, but we should have taken him up on it. But in between static on the way home, Debbie pointed out something that I had not mentioned. And it's kind of looking back. We have an idea when we look at a book of the Bible and we say, okay, this, the author of the book, Solomon or whoever, sat down and wrote the book. Kind of like, we imagine people write books today. Now, I've never written a book, so I can't really speak to that, but I don't know that many people sit down and just say, I'm going to write a book today. And start in the beginning, it was a dark and stormy night, and then go through and write the whole book. I mean, there's pages and there's rewrites and things like that. And, so one of the things in biblical scholarship is to kind of look back and say, okay, how was this book formed? And one idea about how this book was formed is that rather than just say it's a story, it's a collection of love poems, love sonnets, put together that are attributed to Solomon or by Solomon or some during the Solomonic era, that they're put together in a way to make a bigger point. Okay, so these are, and one source has identified 31 different, based on structure and organization, 31 different poems that they put all of these poems together to make a coherent story. Now, we do that today. Does anybody know what that's called when somebody does that today? It's what we call a jukebox musical. Anybody heard of a jukebox musical? Has anybody seen Mamma Mia? The show, heard about Mamma Mia? You take the music of ABBA, who one of their favorite best-known songs was Waterloo, which happened on this date in 1815. Just saying. See, it all comes together. Something like that. You take all of these disconnected songs from these particular singers, and then you put them all together in a show and try to connect them with a storyline. Okay, so Mamma Mia was like the first to be really successful doing that. And then there's been one about Carole King. There's been one about Jimmy Buffett. There's been one with Billy Joel's music. There's the Beatles one. Beatles, from Paul McCartney, and it's his birthday today. But they take all of these disconnected things and put them together and make a love story out of it to illustrate something about love. And what Kreeft does in his book is he looks at the different things. Let's see, I don't have my clock back there today. But yeah, that's not good. It's like when the clock, then when I look and everyone else is looking at the clock. Of course, my favorite preacher joke. It's my favorite preacher joke. What does it mean when the pastor looks at his watch? When the preacher looks at his watch? What does it mean when the preacher looks at his watch? Nothing. Nothing. It means nothing. But be that as it may, what Kreeft does is he looked at Song of Songs and said, this is a story about love. This is a poem about love, and it illustrates life as love. And he gives 26 examples in the book, or 26 characteristics of love that are illustrated in one way or another through the book of of Song of Songs. And it would be really interesting, and he points this out, would really be interesting if you wanted to do like a study on love, is to take his 26 items and a study of 1 Corinthians 13. Usually when people talk about, I'm going to preach about love, we go to 1 Corinthians 13, right? But he would say it'd be interesting to do this and that at the same time. But as he talks about the things about love, one of the interesting elements to it is to say, is to ask yourself, when we talk about characteristics of love, to realize that, the Bible says in 1 John that God is love. Right, in 1 John 4, that God is love. So it's like when we talk about things, are these characteristics that we may have of love, are they characteristic of God? God is love, sort of thing. So, going down, there's 26 of these. Do you want another one, Dave?
Yes.
There are 26 different characteristics of love that Kreeft talks about that are illustrated by the Song of Songs. Okay, and the first one is that love is a song. That when when the biblical writers said, you know what, we need to illustrate love in some way, they naturally went to a song. Okay, if you've ever read C.S. Lewis, The Magician's Nephew, this is part of the Chronicles of Narnia. So, has anybody read The Magician's Nephew? It's the last/first of the Chronicles of Narnia books. So in the world of the Chronicles of Narnia, it's kind of like Star Wars, in that there's an argument over which book comes first. So if you talk to Star Wars fans, say, I watched the first movie. Okay, well, what is the first Star Wars movie? Well, depending on whether you're a purist or not, the first movie is the fourth movie, or the fourth movie is the first movie. Because when it started, the first movie, the one we all remember as Star Wars, A New Hope, started off Star Wars, Part 4. Does anybody remember that from 1977 when it first came up on the screen? It said Star Wars, Part 4. This is the first we'd ever seen it, but it was telling you it was Part 4. So they did 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 7, 8, 9. Well, the same thing with the Chronicles of Narnia. The first book that Lewis wrote was The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. And then he wrote Prince Caspian and The Voyage of the Dawn Treader and The Final Battle. And then he got 5 of them done, and he figured he needed to put a starting one. And so the last book he wrote is the first book in the series, The Magician's Nephew. But in that, when he talks about Aslan the lion, and he illustrates Aslan's first appearance on the scene, what Aslan the lion is doing, and Aslan represents God, Aslan is singing. That it starts with singing. And the thought is, and there are some who believe that singing precedes talking. That vocabulary was added to our communication techniques in order to make singing more comprehensible. I don't know. But it starts with Aslan singing, and when the Old Testament writer, whoever wrote Song of Songs, wanted to tell the story of love, the natural vehicle to do that was a song. And not just a song, but the Song of Songs. Okay? Hence, why are there so many silly love songs? Paul McCartney, Born on This Day, 1942. Okay? Why are there? Because, it's a universal experience. Okay? But not only is love a song, love is the greatest song. So when the Old Testament writer here wants to write a song about love, he doesn't just call it just an old-fashioned love song. Okay? He says this is the greatest song, and what makes it the greatest song is it's a song that describes love. And we talked about it last week, that it describes the love, it uses the love of two individuals. It uses the love of two individuals to illustrate how love should be, as well as the love between God and Israel, or between Christ and the church, kind of thing, okay? So love is the greatest song, okay? So that's one of the reasons why it's called the Song of Songs, and we talked about that. Then in let's see, 8:7, what does it say here? It says, many waters cannot quench love, rivers cannot sweep it away. If one were to give all the wealth of one's house for love, it would be utterly scorned. Okay? That it's beyond value. It's the greatest. Any song about love is far, far greater. Okay? But love is a dialogue. Love is a dialogue. Okay? And one of the things that we noted last week when we talked about Song of Songs, that we have this conversation going back between the two main characters, where the man says this in the woman's response. You are the lily of the valley, like a lily among the reeds you are. Okay? She says, your love is better than wine. He responds later, your love is better than wine. That it's a dialogue in between the two. Okay? And I suppose somebody has done it. I did not do it. But I suppose somebody has done the a word count. But to me, it's pretty equal in terms of how the conversation is going back and forth. And I think that's a good characteristic of love. You know, if you're two people that are in love with each other, there's a dialogue going on. Okay? Going back to this, I don't want to beat the dead horse of this Shiny Happy People documentary again, but we've gotten a lot of mileage out of this behavioral contract idea. Remember I talked about it, where you write up this contract and you tell the kids and the wife, that if you do that, if you don't do this, then I can punish you, which includes using the rod. And there are couples that have these things. They're like, whoa, it's like, what planet are these people from? I know what planet these people. Those are my people that are doing this, but that's a whole nother. It's a different kind of Baptist group, not a Southern Baptist group, but it's a different. But we've gotten a lot of mileage out of that. But I can't imagine there being a lot of dialogue in a house like that. I'm just saying. But love is a dialogue. Okay, love is synergistic. Love is synergistic. Better together. Okay. Now that is not to say that a person cannot be unmarried, and that a person who is unmarried is incomplete, that is incapable of. And I think this is something that perhaps the church goes a little too far in one direction on sometimes, where we assume that the highest and best state for all people to be in is married. And it's great. Don't get me wrong. I mean, I'm all for marriage. I've been doing it for 31 years. 31 years? 31? Yeah, 31. Okay. That was close. Been doing it for 31 years. Highly recommend it. But not everybody needs to be married. Not everybody can be married. Not everybody wants to be married. And that's okay. But one of the elements of love that you see in a marriage relationship, it is synergistic. It is better together. In chapter 1, 15 and 16, just kind of the two of them. And this is actually how Debbie and I greet each other in the morning. For chapter 1, verse 15. How beautiful you are, my darling. Oh, how beautiful your eyes are doves. And she says to me, how handsome you are, my beloved. Oh, how charming. That's almost exactly how we greet each other in the morning. One of the reasons why I've been married for 31 years and still. But be that as it may. But it's better together. Okay? In chapter 2, you've got that, I am a rose of Sharon. The woman describes herself. I am a rose of Sharon, a lily of the valley. Okay, again, that's a real flower, but that's where we get that phrase, that song used, the lily of the valley, the bright morning star. And then he builds on it. Like a lily among thorns is my darling among the young women. That one of the characteristics of love is that they are better together. Okay, that there's something better together. Okay, love is alive. Love is alive. In 7, let's see here, 7:12. Let's see how. No, let's not go there. I don't see how that. At the time I made the note, I understood how that, but now I don't see the link to that. But love is alive. Kreeft talks about, when we talk about love, when we talk about love, we talk about we are in love. That it's something that we go into. That there's something about it that it's this agreement that I'm in love and you're in love and hopefully we're in love with each other. That's how it's supposed to work. But love is alive. We're in love, and this goes back to the first John 4 where it says God is love. First, let me read. I'll just read the whole. Hebrews, James, John, 1 Peter, 1 John. Finding, and so we know, verse 16, 1 John 4:16, and so we know and rely on the love God has for us. God is love. Whoever lives in love lives in God, and God in them. Okay. So love is alive. Love is gospel. Or you could say love is good news, because that's what gospel means. Love is gospel. It's good news. It is a life force. In Deuteronomy chapter 30, Genesis, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy. One of the questions I had to answer when I went through the ordination council was, guy literally professor, PhD, Bible professor. This guy, Greek, Hebrew. One of his questions for me was, can you quote the books of the Bible? Name the books of the Bible. Which, when you're sitting there on a platform in front of all these people, is not as easy as you think. Kind of go, okay, is it Habakkuk, Hosea, Joel, kind of. So, it's one of those kind of things you think, oh yeah, no problem. Stand up in front of a group and then do it in Latin. Then that's when it gets interesting. But Deuteronomy 30. I lost my place here. Deuteronomy 30, beginning verse 19. This day I call the heavens and the earth as witness against you that I have set before you life and death, blessings and cursing. Now choose life so that you and your children may live and that you may love the Lord your God. Listen to his voice and hold fast to him. For the Lord is your life, and he will give you many years in the land he swore to give to your fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Joseph. So he's bringing this opportunity. This is good news. Okay. Usually, when somebody, if you've ever been in the situation where somebody is announcing to you that they are in a relationship. Okay. Now this was before Facebook, when we just I see you're in a relationship, kind of thing, or relationship. It's complicated. Okay, something like that. But usually, when somebody's like, oh, I've got a new, my new boyfriend, my new girlfriend, I'm in love. I had a friend, I know that's amazing enough. I had a friend. What's even more amazing is I still have this friend. My one friend from high school. He's also my one friend from college. We went to the same school. So he doubles as my high school and college friend. So, it saves a lot of time. That's all the Christmas cards you don't have to send, because you have the one to your high school friend, one to your college friend. But we were roommates. In fact, when I moved out we were talking earlier about when I moved out into the place where Debbie and I managed to do it without wounding my ankle, but be that as it may. For those of you who were here earlier, you know why that's the story. But we were both in our mid-20s, hitting the dating scene, and it was a very common thing. We were, how was your date? And the response was, I'm in love. This time it's for real. This time it's for real. We had this running gag going. But still, love is gospel. It's good news. Okay, love is power. Love is power. Okay, and again, this is looking at the imagery that people who are in love are empowered. That there's a fulfilling element to it, and you see the woman in Song of Songs, talking to her friends and about her love. Okay, the next one it's interesting. Love is work. Okay, love is work. Now, Kreeft quotes Kierkegaard. Now, I like Kierkegaard. I really do. I think, although he gets a bad rap because of that whole founder of existentialism thing. Okay, I get it. But You know, Kierkegaard was a believer, and he was writing about the church in the Netherlands. I think he's Dutch. He's either Dutch or Norwegian or something up in that Swedish. But he was writing about people needing to make a leap of faith and you know, embrace their existence. And that his writings has been taken by those who went on to form existentialism. But as Kierkegaard points out, love in Christianity is not a feeling as it is for romanticism. Rather, love is the works of love. That is why Christ can command love. Only a fool tries to command a feeling. That there's work involved. You know, there's work involved. I mean, we talk about things. You know, oh, I love the Beatles. Really, what have you ever done for what have you ever done for them? Okay, are you doing anything? Are you exhibiting that love? I mean, if somebody says, you know, if you see two people, and one of them says, yeah, I'm in love with so and so. Okay, I'm male A and there's female A over here, and oh yeah, I'm in love with her. Well, great. What did just because I'm just studying. I'm doing a research study, and when is your amorata? Is that the right word? Your loves. When's her birthday? Oh, I don't know. Okay, well, what's her favorite color? What's her favorite movie? What does she like to eat? What does she like to, what does she like to do? I don't know. And you start asking all these questions, and if the guy doesn't know the answers to any of those questions, how many of you would think, would take out your calendar and say, okay, this thing is going to be over by such and such a day, stick a pin in this relationship because it's not going to last, kind of thing, I mean, one of the things, when a person gets into a relationship, and suddenly it's like all they want to talk about is the other person. Oh, let me tell you what my wife did. Let me tell you what it's like if you ever talk to somebody for an extended period of time and you never find out whether they're married or not, you kind of go, wow, how, and I think this is interesting. Again, looking at this as a picture of God and the church, that God is talking to his church. He's telling, this is what I'm like. This is what, that's what the Bible is about. The Bible is a book about God, to tell us about God so that we can love him. We can say, what is God like? What does God want? Just like the man wants to see the woman. He doesn't want to he wants to see the woman. Come out from, show me your face. Let me hear your voice. And the woman says, where is my love? And she goes looking for him, kind of thing. These are the works that these two are trying to, there's an action, Love is work. Love is desire and fulfillment. Okay. Of course, in chapter 1, verse 2, a couple of different things. Let him kiss me with the kisses of his mouth, for your love is more delightful than wine. Okay, so again, talking about that, and he comes back and repeats the same thing. Fulfillment in 8:5. Under the apple tree I roused you. There your mother conceived you. There she was who labored to give you birth. That there's a consummation in any kind of this. Again, this is a romantic love relationship, but there's work involved. Okay, there's work involved, but it isn't labor. It isn't like, oh, I gotta go get a birthday card. So it's like, what would you think about a relationship when if hey, can you come out tonight? No, it's the old lady's birthday tonight. Gotta go. How strong would you think? Hey, wow, we need somebody to do some marriage counseling at the church. You think you could do it? Because you seem to have this nailed down. Would you ask that of that person? No, you wouldn't. Of course not. And I think some of us have, not some of us, or maybe some of us, kind of have that relationship in the church, or with God. It's like, what does God want of us? I don't know. I don't know. I don't really know. I haven't really thought about it in a while. Haven't given it a whole lot of, oh, I suppose, When he wants me to do something, he'll let me know. Right? Okay, that's, imagine a family relationship like that, a marriage relationship, a relationship like that. What does your wife want for her birthday? I don't know. If she wants something, she'll let me know. Okay, good luck with that. Let me know how that works out for you, kind of thing. Okay. Suffering goes with love. Suffering goes with love. Chapter 2:5 says, "Strengthen me with raisins, refresh me with apples, for I am faint with love." It's interesting. The thing about marriage, one of the things about marriage, and this doesn't necessarily follow with the church, but marriage is a relationship almost always, not always, but almost always ends sadly for at least one of the persons. Do you think about that? Almost always ends sadly for one of the persons. Yet we do it anyway. And because somebody's going to die. If nothing else, somebody is going to die. And that's a sad moment. But we don't think, well, you're 22, 23 years old. It's like, yeah, I'd love to marry you, but 70, 75 years from now, you're going to die and I'm going to be sad, so let's just not do this kind of thing. We do it because we're like, hey, it's worth the work. It's worth the suffering. Love is free. Love is free. Here, the going through, I forget where the verse is. I didn't write it down. Where both of them, there's no encumbrance on them, on either the shepherd or the woman, to interact with each other. Love is true to reality. Okay? Love is true to reality. We rejoice, the friends say, we rejoice and delight in you. We will praise your love more than wine. How right they are, this is her talking, the woman, how right they are to adore you. Dark am I, yet lovely, going on, talking about that suntan, that sunburn that has made her dark. Love is true to reality. All right, so it's like, the rose-colored glasses are great, but I think one of the great things about love is that, yeah, we all have flaws, except for Debbie, of course, right there. I would say it's going to be a quiet ride home, but it's not, because the car's going to be staticking at us all the way home, kind of thing. But no, we all have flaws. We all have weaknesses. We all have peccadillos. We all have weird likes, and sometimes we get used to them, or sometimes we come to enjoy them, we come to like them. We love the person anyway. I mean, you think about it. God is love, and God loves you. And think of all the problems you've got. Okay? All the reasons God shouldn't love me. And there are quite a few. And yet he does anyway. Okay? Love is true to reality. Similar, love is accurate. Chapter 2:14. My dove in the cleft of the rocks, in the hiding places on the mountainside. Show me your face. Let me hear your voice. For your voice is sweet and your face is lovely. He wants to see her. He wants to have the accurate view of her. This is, maybe she thinks that she's not as attractive as he is. Okay? But he's like, no, you're attractive to me. Okay? Love is accurate. Love is accurate. Love is simple. Love is simple. In verses 15 and 16 of chapter 1 again, how beautiful you are, my darling, or how beautiful, again, how handsome, my beloved. It's work. We said it's work earlier, but it's not, it's not difficult. That's the thing. It's like, I know with one of my sons, one of the relationships that one of my sons was in, he was, we were talking about it, and he was talking about the effort he was putting into the relationship. And I'm like, shouldn't be that much work. There's It shouldn't be that much work. And this is an interesting thing, is how much work do you have to do to be loved by God? None. The answer is none. Okay? You know, God is love. God loved us in that while we were yet sinners, Christ died for us. I mean, you just think about that. You know, that element of love that I have to go back and think of how the whole passage goes. But that's the one where it's sometimes a good man will die for his friends, but Christ died for us even while we were yet sinners. Being a sinner, not being a lover of God, we were at enmity with him. We were God's enemies, and Jesus came down and died for us anyway. Knowing that, you know, some of us probably wouldn't accept it. Would have come down and die anyway. Okay? Love is simple. Love is individual. And this is kind of an interesting point that he makes. Love is individual. Here, like in 2:2, he says, you know, like a lily among the thorns is my darling among the women. And in chapter 5, he talks about, you know, there's 60 queens and 80 courtesans, but you stand out. Kreeft points out something that I think was pretty interesting. Let me find the passage here. Wrote it down. If your preachers or teachers have told you that the Bible teaches you to love humanity, they have told you a lie. Not once does the Bible say that. Not once did it even mention the word humanity. Jesus always commands us to love God and to love our neighbor. So love is an individual thing. It's interesting because I love people. I love people. You know, because you know, when you make it, oh yeah, we love. When the Bible doesn't say love the community, the Bible says love your neighbor. It's individual. It's like love is something that is focused on individual. You know, in the world of affections, I guess, for lack of a better word, to me, you know, there's like 4 stages of it. There's being polite, nice, kind, love. So how you relate to others on the positive side. I suppose there's also, this is my opinion, there's no source to this. You know, being polite, you could be polite to people you can't stand, right? Just thank you, you know, whatever, or people with whom you have no connection, you know. Being nice, you know, the difference between being nice and being kind, to me, this is my distinction. A nice person does what a person wants. Okay? That's being nice. A nice person does what a person wants. A kind person does what a person needs. Okay, so, you know, if you're dealing with somebody who has an addiction problem or something like that and just needs a fix, needs a drink, something like that, a nice thing would be to, oh yeah, here's a drink. That's what he wants. That's what she wants. A kind thing is to, no, you don't need a drink. You need this kind of thing. And love is simply kindness focused on one person, you know. But again, it's like love your neighbor. How are you being kind / loving toward that one individual? But it's an individual thing. Love is a surprise. 2:8-10 here, the woman is speaking. She says, listen, my beloved, look, here he comes, leaping across the mountains, bounding over the hills. And this is exactly how Debbie describes me coming in the front door. Look, my beloved is like a gazelle or a young stag. Look, there he stands behind our walls. Kind of. She does all the time, you know. But, you know, sometimes it's a surprise. It's a surprise. It's like, you know, sometimes, you know, you're and especially if you're in a dating relationship, you know, for some of us, like when I met Debbie at our fabled meeting, you know, it took me about 1/8 of a second to go, hey, this is the one for me. I was convinced like right away. Debbie took a little bit longer, like about a year. You know, so I've come to embrace that difference in decision-making skills. It took me like, hey, you like tennis? So do I. Boom, I'm in. Her, yeah, she just about ripped my arm out of my socket once when we were walking through the mall, and I stopped at a jewelry store. engagement rings. She did. I swear, it was. I'll never pitch in the major leagues again, But she's like, no, whoa. I was ready, but it was a surprise to her, and I think it's still a surprise to her. In fact, we spent Friday with many of the relatives on her side of the family, and it's still a surprise to many of them as well. But be that as it may, love is fearless. Again, God is love. Love is fearless. In Psalm 27, let's see what it says here. Psalm 27:10. Though my mother and father forsake me, the Lord will receive me. That the Lord does not allow, is fearless in terms of however anyone else feels about you. The love of God overcomes that, okay? Love is fearless. Getting on toward my time here. Love is fearless. Love is the exchange of ourselves. And again, the passage that comes in there was like, I am my love's, my beloved is mine. Again, remember we told you that it's what's that passage is engraved inside our rings, our wedding rings. I am my love's. I am my love's, my beloved is. It's an exchange of ourselves. They say one of the things about, and I've never been divorced, so I don't know this, or been widowed, but they say one of the psychological problems with that is that as you are married and as you spend time with a significant other, that certain thought processes get, not compartmentalized isn't quite the right word, but she takes care of this and I take care of that, and you just have this understanding, that I change the oil and she takes, changing the oil is about all I take care of. That she's learned. I can't be trusted with anything else besides that.
There's the sound problem in our car.
Oh, but that's not the oil. So and then once you that relationship is ended, then that's one of the stressors. It's like, wait a minute, what about who took care of all that? I have to take care. How was that done? But there's that natural exchange. That I'll take care of this and you'll take care of that kind of thing. And if you can go through and look at all the passages in the Bible where things about all the assurances that God gives us, casting all your care upon him because he cares for you, kind of thing. Great. I figure this would be quicker than it turning out to be. Love is triumphalistic. I'll just give you the ones. Love is triumphalistic. Love is natural. Love is faithful. Love is ready. Love is all-inclusive. Love is sexist, in that when you look at the Bible, God always appears in the husband role, and the wife is Israel, or the church is the bride of Christ. It's sexist in that element. And love is as strong as death. And we talked about that one last week. Love is as strong as death, that inevitability to it. That, if you're out there and you're interacting with people, you will experience love with them. The idea of being all-inclusive, excuse me, he refers to another book by C.S. Lewis called The Four Loves, where Lewis identifies four kinds of love. Eros, meaning desire, affection, friendship, or charity, self-giving. That you see elements of these all through the book. I haven't read this Lewis book. I mean, trouble with C.S. Lewis is every time you read a C.S. Lewis book, you find out that there's two more that he wrote. It's like But be that as it may, so all of these four are elements, and all four of these are part of the relationship. And I think a contemporary idea is that we talk about how many of you are familiar with like the love languages idea? Okay, five love languages? 5. There's 5 of them. Okay, so acts of service, words of affirmation, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And one of the things with that is we look at this and we say, okay, we took the test, we did the quiz, we filled out the survey, whatever. We've determined that our love language is this, and their love language is this. And so then one of the ways that you interpret that information is you say, okay, in order for me to show love to my spouse, I need to speak in her love language. And okay, that makes perfect sense. Okay, that makes perfect sense. Okay, but it doesn't preclude all of the other things as well. Just because a person's love language is acts of service doesn't mean that they don't appreciate words of affirmation as well. Does that make sense? So it's like, when he says love is all inclusive here, I think the point is not that, okay, it's all about eros. Okay, so if you have ever met somebody or seen somebody in a relationship where all they talk about is, there's this tendency amongst celebrity type pastors to be constantly talking about their smoking hot wife. It's like, okay, that's, I'm like, okay, yeah, she's attractive, but let's move on from there, kind of thing. But it's like, it's all of these. It's affection, it's friendship, it's charity, it's doing something together. It's again, what are the words of affirmation, touch? What are those? It's words of affirmation, touch, gifts. Okay, so so it's like, if acts of service or if gifts are the love language, that doesn't mean a gift isn't appreciated. It's just kind of like, really, to me, the big takeaway is like, don't ignore the one that you know is their love language. So, all right. Well, listen, I'm past my time here. So the thing about Song of Songs, this greatest song, this song that illustrates love. Okay, it illustrates the love between these two individuals. It talks about how these two appreciate each other, are in dialogue with each other, and it pictures the way God is in dialogue or is in love. And I don't mean that in any sort of cheap way, but loves his people and how we should love God, how God loves the church, Jesus loves Jesus in the relationship to the church, and how we can have a relationship with God as well. Okay. Any questions? No, let me tell you what's going on here. So on Wednesday, Debbie and I are going to Honduras because we're smart that way. Central America in the summertime. What could possibly go wrong?
It's the same in the wintertime.
Yeah, but so we're going to Honduras, and we're going to be gone for 2 Sundays, and so Paul will be here. I believe that's the last plan I had, and then I'll be back for a week, and then then I'm going to, again, it seemed like a really good idea at the time. I'm going to the Boy Scout Jamboree in Charleston, West Virginia, and then I'll be back. Be gone for 2 weeks. And Paul was supposed to be here for that too. I don't know whether that's going to happen or not, but don't worry, we'll have you covered. And then when I get back, we'll dive into 1 Corinthians. So we're gonna move out of the Old Testament, get into an epistle, and what an epistle it is. So something to look forward to. Something completely different. Talking about what does Paul have to say about. And in 1 Corinthians, he pretty much ticks all the boxes. So, come on in.
That love chapter.
That's right. Yes. See, it all works together. It all ties in. I don't know how I'm going to tie that into Waterloo, but somehow I will. Any questions?
What's the name of that book?
3 Philosophies of Life.
Okay.
He talks about Ecclesiastes as a life as vanity, Job, life as suffering, Song of Songs, life as love. So.
I liked it when I saw all these love is. The first thing that came to my mind is a little video I listened to. Ravi Zacharias at one point was asked what about all the evil in the world, and his response in short was that evil is here because God gave free will and the establishment of love. We have love, which is an act of will, and the only way to have love is to give the opposite, which is rejection and evil. And so all we hear all day long typically in the news is all the negatives that go on the, what is evil. And I love this, what is love, because that just demonstrates the wisdom of God in establishing love in all its aspects. So, but the one of these that I didn't quite understand what you mean is love is triumphalistic. Use that. I've seen that word used in negative terms, so I'm wondering how it's used in a positive term, because I assume it is.
Let me look it up here because I didn't write anything next to it, which means at a time, much of the imagery in the Song of Songs does not appeal to the modern sensibility because it is old-fashioned, ceremonial, formal, even military. Love is simply superior. Our hearts protest against the flat land and yearn for their true country and their true dimension of verticality. Love is simply superior. It belongs on a throne. It rightly brags, praises, exalts, celebrates, sings its song of songs, its non-ordinary song, its greatest song. It deserves silver and gold and robes and crowns. Heaven will be full of it, had we not better practiced living with it.
Love conquers all. Yeah.
Love conquers all, yeah.
Okay.
Love wins, kind of thing. All right, thank you much.